Hey, I just wanted to post these videos. I had a good day of flying yesterday. Wanted to show this off before I get into the engine stuff. Me and a couple buddies flew up to the Chicago area. I've never been up there before in my life, especially not in the air. And we flew up to Columbus, Indiana, got some breakfast, and then hit the Chicago skyline to sightsee, and then stopped back in Eagle Creek, Indiana to get lunch. So good day, enjoy the scenery, and I'll get back with you on the engine stuff here in a second. Morning guys, it's Brent with Lykins Motorsports. This is our 482 FE all aluminum tunnel port motor. Just got through degreasing the camshaft, and it came in right where it was supposed to without any changes. And now we are on to checking piston valve clearance. I've got my head gasket. This is the FE Power tunnel port head. You can look back through past videos and see where I previewed this head and assembled this head. Set up for a solid flat tappet. Got the inner valve springs out so that we can break the cam in. We got our Trin tool steel solid flat tappet lifters in there for checking piston valve clearance. I'm gonna get our T&D rocker set up, and then we'll run this through a cycle. Here's our T&D rockers. It's a needle bearing rocker. It will oil either through the push rods or through the heads. Obviously, we're oiling through the push rods on this one. Comes with studs. Comes with everything you see here. Pretty nice setup. Geometry should be pretty close out of the box, and we're getting ready to find out. So I just need to hook up my push rod length checker, and we'll be ready to roll. All right, so Evo method, exhaust valve is opening. You can check your intake rocker. So we are not checking for push rod length at this time. We're just doing push rod length clearance or push rod length measurement. So got our intake lifter on the base circle. We've got our rocker arm and our lifter connected. We're just going to roll this over. So anytime that you feel any kind of binding or anything like that, obviously you stop. You'll probably feel a little bit as you hit the clay. But otherwise it should be a pretty seamless process. So I usually roll over a couple times for each valve and then pull it off and check it. Just pulled our rockers off. I think the geometry is pretty spot on. I never really have any trouble with T&D stuff. This is a very, very narrow pattern, about 50 thousandths, and pretty near the center. So I'm not gonna touch anything on that. Now I'm just gonna pull the cylinder head off and check our clay imprint. All right, here's our results. So we've got, you check for two different clearances. You check for radial clearance, which is the clearance between the outside rim of the valve and the valve relief, and then you check for your depth clearance, which is, you know, how far down the valve comes from the valve pocket in the piston. So we've got plenty of dimensions. I've got 50 to 60 thousandths radial clearance between the valve and the valve relief. I've got 150 thousandths clearance right there on where the valve relief is on the outside quench pad of the piston. Down here we've got about 210 thousandths to the dish of the piston. And on the intake side, again, 50 or 60 thousandths radial, 110 thousandths down to the valve relief in this little quench area. And then 200 thousandths on this where this radius is. And obviously it gets deeper than that. So we are good to go on piston to valve clearance. You can run really tight on the intake side. Depth clearance on the intake side, I ran 60-70 on an overhead valve motor, and on an overhead cam motor I ran 10 or 12. So intake side just doesn't really make that much difference. Exhaust side is what you have to watch for. Again, I ran 70 or 80 on the exhaust side depth, and if you have, somewhere around 100, then you're in perfect shape. So I'm gonna get all this cleaned up, and we'll start knocking. Well, I think I'll put my timing cover on next. All right, here's our timing cover ready to go on. This is a Shelby piece. It's got one of my aluminum adjustable timing pointers. Got our seal in. What I did do was spray paint the gasket. I didn't do that for sealing purposes. I did it so that you don't look at the engine and see a big blue gasket sticking out. So I sprayed it on the ends and what may show past the timing cover. So little details like that. All right, I forgot I didn't have any 3/8 bolts the length that I need. But the cover is secured on there enough for the silicone to dry. Got our new steel balancer spacer in there. Had to hone it to fit the crank. Power bond, harmonic balancer, adjustable timing pointer. I just got through checking true top dead center, and we are dead on. So we're good to go, and I'm gonna start knocking in pistons. Getting closer and closer. All right, so we're putting rings on pistons after everything is washed and cleaned. Make sure you wash all of these really, really good. They're dirty right out of the box, and especially they're dirty after you grind on them. But just wrap your expander around. What I like to do is where that gap is right there, I just like to put my thumb over it. And then your top oil rail, I'll usually start on about a 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock position on the top. Wrap it around. And then I'm still holding my thumb over the end. And we go to about 2 o'clock, put our other oil rail on the bottom. And these little 1 millimeter rings, they're pretty, you just gotta be careful with them because they wanna go everywhere, but everything spins really smooth like that. I flip it around 180 degrees to me. And then we're gonna put our second ring on, and I can tell it's a second ring because it's a Napier ring. It's got a little hook on it. So we put the molly up to the top on this set. Each ring pack is a little bit different. Make sure it's in the grooves. Sometimes they can be a little cantankerous, but you want them to spin really, really easy. Then I flip it back around, and I put the top ring on. And everybody likes to put it, everything on 180 degrees or clock the rings or whatever, but most people don't know that the rings spin at about 12 RPM, and it really doesn't matter. All right, so all of our rings are on. They spin really good and easy. I just use just a little bit of oil. You don't want to dunk pistons in oil. Just rub it into the skirts on top of the rings. Then you lube I use a tapered ring compressor. Before you slide it up, you just want to make sure the ends of the rings are in the groove. If you feel something binding, you stop, but you see how easy that is to load that up. Lube my rod bearing. Then we're ready to put it in the motor. All right, I also like to, if you look down in this hole right here, you can see that the crank is at the bottom of the stroke. That's really a safety factor, because when you put this in here and you hammer down on it, you don't want it to hit the rod journal or nick the rod journal. So I usually run the crank down at the bottom and then put my piston in. All right, we got all 8 in. We got good rotation. So I'm gonna flip her over and torque the rod bolts now. All right, we got 30 pound-feet plus 60 degrees on these. You do need a special torque wrench to torque these accurately. Once they're torqued, I go back and check our side-to-side clearance. And I don't really get concerned about side-to-side clearance unless it's like under, I think the rule of thumb is like 4 thousandths per bearing clearance, if I remember correctly. I've seen anywhere from like 12 thousandths. These are 25 and 26. That doesn't really bother me, as it'll just splash more oil up on the camshaft, and that's fine. Otherwise, you know, it's not going to hurt anything. You get a lot of these scat combinations, scat crank, Molar rods, or scat rods, where the side-to-side clearance is in the 20s. You just have to check, though. If you messed up and put a rod bearing on wrong or something like that, then you probably won't have any side clearance, and that's another reason you just roll through here and check everything. All right, everything's double checked on the torque, on the rod bolts, on the main bolts. We've got our Melling high volume oil pump bolted down tight, and our Canton front sump pickup. I checked the pickup clearance. This is our Canton road race pan front sump. I just got to take out this tray and give everything a nice bath. This is how it comes shipped. Nastiness. So just have to wash everything out, and then we can get our oil pan on. All right, the oil pan is on. We got stainless steel fasteners everywhere. I try to do that because nobody likes to have an engine that's 3 or 4 months old and seeing rust on it. New oil filter adapter, Lykins filter. I'm gonna flip her over and get the heads on. All right, I went ahead and put our lifters in just to basically put something in the hole, keep something out of it, or keep dust or dirt, whatever. Something in the distributor hole as well, so nothing falls in there. Got our Felpro 1020 head gaskets. These are 40 thousandths thick. The big hole goes towards the back, front towards the front. The fire ring sits right on top of the sleeve. That's why these head gaskets are so good for this type of engine. Front, got the hole in the back. Everything's good. We'll set our heads down on here. Heads are torqued. Gonna have a problem with this intake manifold. I don't have any gaskets on here, but take a good gasket to make that up. The ports are also nowhere near aligned. So haven't had it vapor blasted yet, so it's still crummy looking on the outside. Certainly don't need to have the intake manifold cut, but it looks like I may have to make up some custom gaskets. I'll have to tape some washers or something to the head and get a good idea on how far it needs to be spaced out. All right, so I've got about 150 thousandths worth of shims. Gives us a good valve cover rail, and by the time you tighten everything up, the ports would line up. So I need to find some gasket material, I guess, that's that thick, or come up with some kind of a shim spacer or something like that. Probably gasket material, but that'll set me back a little bit. I'll go ahead. I'm trying to think of what to do next here and what will affect me. Got a push rod length checker. This is a 3/8. I don't need a 3/8. I need a 5/16, which will give me, actually got quite a bit of lash in there too. So 5/16 will get me some clearance. I need to check it in this tube here. That's what's most critical on a tunnel port, because I can grind here. I can't, it's extremely difficult to start moving tubes around. But I'm gonna check that out real quick, and then I'll get right back with you. Here we are on the intake side. I got some clearance there on the bottom, and it tends to ride towards the bottom. So I think once whatever gasket material I find and cinch that down, it'll give me some little bit of more room off the bottom there. This is the problem with tunnel ports. They're just, those tubes cause a lot of trouble for clearance. It's one of the reasons why we went with a flat tappet. If you use a roller lifter, it pushes your pushrod seat up, which, you know, changes your geometry on your pushrod. Since these engines were built with a solid flat tappet, then it's a little bit, makes things a little bit easier. What I can go ahead and do, since the cylinder head will not change, the geometry is perfect on these rockers, I can go ahead and measure for push rods and order those on Monday. And then I'll just start digging and trying to find what I can get for gasket material. All right, the easiest way I can explain to do this, T&D wants you to back the adjuster all the way out, turn it one full turn in, and that's where they prefer you to run the adjuster for optimum oiling and all that stuff. So I did that on both intake and exhaust. We have our exhaust lifter coming up, so that means we're clear to set or measure for our intake. I just lengthen my checker out. We're gonna run 18,000 slash, so we got a good feel on lash, and I just tighten this up. And then loosen our rockers up. More than that. And measure the length of our checker. Getting 9/300, so I'll write that down for the intake side, and then we'll check the exhaust side. For the exhaust side, we'll roll the engine over until that intake lifter starts to come up, and then go back down. Take our checker, stick it in here. So it's gonna be a little bit off already. So I'll screw all this back in, make sure that our rockers sit down where they're supposed to be. Get this to tighten. I can loosen it up or make it longer. Sometimes you just need two hands. Hold on a minute. All right, and here's our exhaust. So 9/300 on that one as well. So this will be easy. 9/300 for both. We'll order some 5/16 105 push rods, and we'll be well on our way. So not much left I can do right now. I've got some temporary bolts in the 3/8 side of our timing cover. Those will be in tomorrow. I can button that up. I can put our water pump on and our pulleys. But as far as all this, we've got a little bit left to do. Push rods need to come in. Intake has to be vapor blasted, and I need to see what I can find with the gasket material. If you guys see any Nice fiber cellulose gasket material in around 150 thousandths. Let me know. I'll be looking, and if you can help me look, I'd appreciate it. All right, that's going to be it for today. Got a good bit done. Got a very good head start on getting this engine completed. So the next couple weeks will be a telltale of the rest of the progress. Probably take a couple weeks to get push rods in, a couple weeks to get the intake all cleaned up and made pretty, and I should have the front end ready to rock and roll by then. Tunnel port, all aluminum. FE power heads, T&D rockers. Nice little piece. Oh, you all asked about camshaft specs. I'll show you this one. About 266 on the intake side, 280 on the exhaust side. The exhaust side of these heads is sitting at about 55% of the intake side. So we try to do what we can to bump that up. This one's on a 113 lobe center. Everything degreed in, right? But solid flat tappet, nitride Camcor trend tool steel lifters, and these are EDM lifters. They got a little P hole somewhere in the grease there. You have to take my word for it, but that'll help keep everything lubricated and oiled up. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you can see the dyno results of this one and the other builds I have going on. Be picking up Mr. Jack's 351 Cleveland block and his crank that's been balanced next week, and I can start on that one. And you guys don't want to miss out on the Cleveland builds. Hope you guys are doing good. I will talk to you soon.